Hi everyone. Today I'm here to talk about how to craft your own open source adventure. Um, the reason I call this an adventure, and I think this is a section where it's a little bit about me, is because my journey of open source started with Selenium, but it started because of Browser Stack. So currently I work at Browser Stack and I'm a lead open source engineer there as well as a developer advocate recently. And I think this was back before COVID when I think just before COVID hit, I was looking for jobs and I was fortunate enough to land a job at Browser Stack. And they were also starting out their open source program office, I think, which is great way of giving back to the community and which was being headed by the amazing David Burns, and it still is. And as a part of that, my job requirement is to start working on the open source project Selenium. I had no idea about the open source world, so let's start with what is open source, right? And like this slide says, and I think I found on the net and I think I love it. It says open source is good for me. I will fully embrace it. But why is it good for you? I think there are two aspects to it. One part is why is open source good in general, right? So imagine contributing to a code base which impacts millions of people, the tool or library which is used by millions of people on day-to-day basis, right? So that is you're part of a global movement, you're a part of a global community, you're part of a tool that it's widely popular and everyone uses and understands. Um, and it's just amazing to be a part of something like that because it gives you opportunity to feel very fulfilled in what you've done. At the same time, you feel amazing that someone's using the product you've done. And it could also really help reflect on what it feels like to be a software developer in general and how meaningful it is, the whole journey is. The second part is while open source projects are amazing and there have been veteran projects or there have been projects which have revolutionized the internet or like you start big movements in terms of coding practices, or there's Linux, which has been there forever. It's Selenium's 20th birthday in October, so that's a veteran. So there are a lot of veteran projects which have just stayed and made an industrial standard. And companies have built products using these or on top of this for more enhanced features or matching a certain niche. And that's the kind of impact they have, and that's the kind of usage they have. It's very global in nature. So imagine just being a part of such a big community, right? And what that and how amazing that would be. Second is now you'll tell me, okay, that's great. Open source is good for the world, and that's how it should be. Open anything is better, right? But what will it do for me? So, as an individual, it will help you learn, grow, and be seen. When I say that, it will help you learn good coding practices. It'll help you learn how to be a part of the community. It'll help you learn how to be a good citizen of the community and present yourself and deal with situations, good, bad, ugly. And obviously, you will learn a lot of technical skills, even sometimes soft skills, and get amazing networking opportunities. Right? Because you learn all these things, the next evidence step is you grow. Right? Because you learn all these things, now your skill set becomes very whole rounded because it's a very unique job. Because you're dealing with a lot of people that are outside or only that you've seen on the internet. Potentially, entire team is remote, you've never seen them. And everyone's collaborating for the greater good. And there might be conflicts, discussions that happen on the net, or maybe meetings, which is rarely so, to identify big problems. It's a very different pace of working, but that's how you grow. And the third part being seen. So it brings you really into the limelight or be visible, right? So the code that you write is in the open, the mistakes that you do is in the open. The way you take feedback and how you work on it is in the open. And how well you speak about the work that's been done by the project and others is out in the open. And I think that makes you, if you do a good job at it, you become really, really seen by the community, by the maintainers. It'll help you network and give a chance for really good opportunities to come along. It could be something like attending a conference or doing a blog series for someone, or even probably getting invited to help contribute in another project or even job opportunities. So there are different things that can really impact when it comes to this. And probably this is the reason why a lot of companies, while hiring, they're looking for your open source contributions, right? They're actively trying to see if you make open source contributions because it shows how adaptable you are, that you can work with team, they can do teamwork really well, and that you're open to challenges. And everything good that you've done is there available in public for them to go take a look. They don't just have to assume that the things that you said in your resume are true. They can go verify it. And I think that is why open source is such a big deal when it also comes to your personal growth. All that sounds very nice. And I think pretty much that's something everyone knows. But then what happens when you want to get started? Okay, so we always meet these so-called roadblocks or challenges. And I think these are some of the common challenges that I've understood from folks that I've interacted with, or even pretty much what I had in mind before I got in charge to do open source as a part of my job. Right? So how do you get started? First question is there are overwhelming amount of options. There are just so many projects. How do you narrow down to this is the project I want to start with? I would suggest start with something you're passionate about. Right? It could be a tool or library that you use. It could be a tool or library that uses a language or a skill set that matches with you. Or it could be a domain that you're really, really passionate about and you want to give back to. Um, Say for example, you're working on a tool and you feel like, oh, if I was the developer, I would make it this way, or I would fix the UI, I would help in this manner. Or it is horrible documentation. I'm gonna go fix it. I wish I could go fix it and rewrite this. This doesn't mean not doing well. Or you find a bug that's been really holding your team back for the longest time, and you're like, we're stuck on it because of this dependency project, which is open source. I wish I can go fix it. So you could have any motivation to get started, but I would highly recommend getting started with something you feel really passionate about because anything you do, you can do it only for a longer stretch of time, only if you thoroughly enjoy it. So please try to find a common ground that works for you in terms of what you actually enjoy or something that you know and you're good at least to start with. It could also be trying to learn or knowing a language and try to expand your skill set, and that's totally okay as well. But then one needs to be aware that you need to slowly find if you're going to enjoy that, or you might have to experiment with multiple projects to see where you fit better, what you like better. Right? Second is the time constraints. So now, okay, I found a project, I want to get started, and I found a good first bug or a help wanted tag or a documentation thing that I need to fix or a typo that I can go fix. But I don't have the time to do that. I just don't have the time. And I think that's okay. We have busy lives, we have families, we have our social responsibilities, we have each individual has a lot on their plate at any given moment. Adulting is hard. I'm not denying that. But you could think of making micro contributions, right? A contribution doesn't have to be huge or an entire full-fledged feature or a component or a revamp or a rewrite or going and solving the next step debt. It could be something as simple as going and fixing a typo, improving the README, um, helping do a tutorial or a blog for something that you figured out on your own, or responding to a issue that was reported where a bunch of people are facing it and you just told them, oh, this is how I did it, it worked for me, and it just made their life easier. Right? So no contribution is small or big. All contributions are contributions. Code, non-code could be anything. And it's equally appreciated by the open source maintainers in the community. Another way to probably do this is if micro contributions are not something you're convinced by, it could be to batch your efforts, right? So potentially, how about you set aside a certain time in the week, probably at the end of the week, say on a Friday when you close in early, and you still have the energy to do things, or you just want to do something refreshingly different than what you do in your day job. You could set, say, probably like an hour or two, or whatever time works for you as just a slot, and create a meeting with yourself. So let have that dedicated hour to explore what you want to in the open source world, where you can get started or even continue the contribution you've made a long time ago or want to make now. So once you figure this out, then next comes, okay, you figured out a time slot, you figured out a project. Now what? There's always a voice in a lot of people's head, and I think it's always been in my head as well. It comes and goes, is am I good enough? Am I good enough to do this? And the only way to kind of build the confidence to be like, I'm good enough to do it is do it more, right? Or do it on a regular or a semi-regular basis or in a pattern where you feel like, okay, I think I can do this, and you want to keep doing that relatively often and feeling confident that you gain the knowledge or you have the expertise that you need, right? But also think of it this way. We're not, I think no one is perfect, no code is perfect. So any contribution you make, no one's looking for perfection. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. It's the effort that counts, it's the progress that counts. If we've gone from fixing a README to identifying something in the documentation, and you've been making small contributions when time permits, great. That's huge progress, right? So try to focus on the progress and what you're doing. And even the it could sometimes a bug will have only one line fix and have huge impact. So everything that you do for the open source project has huge impacts in different areas. So just feel confident and go with it. And yeah, and I think once you feel confident and go with it, the next thing that you want to know is where can I get the guidance? I don't know how to get some guidance, help me solve my queries, and that's where all the communication channels are, right? So every open source project has their own Slack, Discord, IRC, different ways of communicating where the maintainers hang out actively. And no question is small or big. So please feel free to ask your questions, get your doubts clarified, get some advice if you need, potentially even mentorship, maybe like people love mentoring and passing on the knowledge, or get help from the community on certain things, right? So what next, right? So how would it look like? So now we figured everything out. A good idea is to probably go through the community code of conduct. Every project has a README or a contributing guidelines to understand how to set up the project or the development setup. Take the time to do that and be comfortable with that. So it's easy to debug something. I think it's very important to set up a development environment and learn how to debug a code because I think that's how you can step through things and learn a lot. And then you can probably start looking for issues like help wanted or good first bugs, or probably be made a contribution. You can also go and see how the code reviews are done. A lot of times, every time you open a pull request, it will run some CIs, it makes some auto suggestions using AI bots and etc. You can go take that, feed it in, fix it, that's fine. And relatively sooner, you should have maintainers helping you review it. If it's something urgent, you can also ask them when time permits, they can do it for you. And I would suggest take that feedback with a stride. Or that critique is not a personal critique. The goal is to make sure that the project is doing the right thing for their community, for their users. And that's the goal, to make sure they've done the bit and you're now an active maintainer. Again, it has its own time and journey. So please make sure it's not time bound. Work at your own pace. That really suits you. But once you reach there, I would highly recommend building a supportive community. So the community, the maintainers that helped you get to where you are, try to be a good citizen and just give that back. Or help a user, help anyone who's starting off, probably help an intern who needs your guidance if they're doing something like Google Summer of Code or outreachy kind of programs to get started on their open source journey. Please guide them. It's really important to encourage everyone to come join this lovely wave. So now, say you've been doing open source for a while, or even for a bit, and you really love it. You find it exciting. You like the pace at which it operates. You like the way it is and how it's out in the open. Um, so then what happens if you want to kind of pursue this as a full-time career? So one option is to be a freelancer. So basically, you be a freelance developer, and you can potentially try to find companies that use open source projects as their base and build something on top of it, some enhanced features, or they use it actively, and then try to find how you can help them and try to get a freelance contract with them. That is one way. Second is getting sponsored for what you do, which is pretty much doing significant contributions and um, getting noticed by companies who have open source dedicated teams, right? Like the one I'm a part of. Similarly, there are huge companies which have their dedicated open source teams, and the kind of waves you make in open source does come in notice, and you can actively sort of try to make sure you're doing that well in a project, or like Hacktober, or even some of them have hackathons, and that might give you some opportunities to work full time, or you can see if they're open roles and how you can help. Third is looking for sponsorships from within the open source projects. Often open source, since it's a volunteer driven project, they're actively sometimes looking for people to come do a chunk of work for a contract position, or do a small project within the project over a span of time, or in general willing to pay you because of the amazing work that you've been doing. They do tend to have the funds, resources, and processes for such things, right? So that's something that they might really, really be into. So you feel free to have a look at that, and that would be great.